is Tomster on the behalf of Indie Structural Productions once again, and I am here to give you guys a little quick tutorial on multiscale, and more specifically how to mark the frets and cut the frets on a multiscale instrument. It is fairly straightforward. Now, the main thing that you want to start off with, the first thing that you have to start off with, is marking your center line. Now, looking at there, make sure you have a really good pencil. I, at this point, do not have a very good pencil, which is somewhat problematic. It just means my lead is going to break quite a bit. Where is my mark? There's my mark. There, and there. One thing that's also very important, you have to have very good light in order for you to see what you're doing. There we are. So there's my center line. One of the main things to keep in mind is that due to the fact that this is a multiscale instrument, you will have the frets fanning one way and then they begin to fan the other way. Usually, more times so than not, the 12th fret is the one that is straight. So that is where I would encourage you to start off with, because it's much easier for you to figure out in that case than where your nut line goes for the two respective scale lengths. Now, usually I would have a book and look at the charts from there to see where my frets land, but due to the fact that I'm not using pretty standard scale lengths, I can't do that because my books didn't have them. So on the bass side it will be a 28-inch scale length, and on the treble side it will be a 26. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an online fret finder. I'll put the link down below, and figure out as well how many millimeters, because I'm working with millimeters, because those I've found that they give me just a much clearer result, and also the fact that I do not like empirical when it comes to doing frets. I get confused with all the different lines. I understand millimeters. Metric system, that's the way to go. What you want to do is you want to convert your inches into millimeters. So I'm going to start with my 28-inch scale length, which would then translate to 711.2 millimeter scale length. Now, just to make sure, there. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky, because I'm doing it on the side. Usually with frets, I will mark them along the middle line, but because there's multiple scale lengths, I can't do that because it doesn't give me the angle that I want. So I need to make sure that my ruler does not move at all, and that's simply enough done by putting some masking tape on each end. The ruler's not going to move anywhere. It's perfectly stable, so now it's easy for me to mark down the frets along the side of the fretboard. Now I'm going to start off with the 12th fret, which sits in at 355.60000, so basically 355.6, which would be 355 right there, and then 0.6 of a mil, be right around there. Now, the reason why that looks a little strange is, bear in mind, this thing is rather enormous. It is meant for a bass, so that's why the fretboard just seems to go on forever. So that's why my 12 frets there. I will show you an example. So this is a neck template for a 25.5-inch scale length, and as you can see, there's way too much fretboard. If I would have a protractor, I would use that right now to draw the line. but alas I do not, so I'll have to use my center line. And line that up spot on. There we are. And there is my 12th fret. Perfect. So now I have the point where I will start drawing on the multiple scale lengths, or the two different scale lengths. So, starting off, I'm just gonna fast forward through me doing all these because there's nothing of interest, so to speak, at this point. And I'll cut back into commentary once I've done this side or this scale length. One thing you just need to keep in mind is be as precise as you can with your ruler. A really good ruler goes a long way. This one is really good, really accurate, and it's fairly easy for you to figure out exactly where you want to hit. Alright, so here goes. Alright, so now I have done the 28-inch scale side. It is time for me to move on to the other one, which is 26 inches. Now going back to my converter, that comes up to 660.4. Let me feed that into my fret counter. 660.4. I can't start here at the nut line that I did earlier because that just wouldn't work. The frets would come out all wonky and not in the right kind of wonky. What I need to do is figure out where the 12th fret is, so it'll be 330.2. So 330.2. That seems pretty good for me. Yep. Alright, now same thing as before. Make sure that my ruler doesn't move anywhere. I'll mask it down, or I'll put it down with masking tape. Alright, which means now my nut line here is the start of the 26-inch scale and goes up until the 12th fret and then starts fanning out that way. Alright, here it goes. So, same sort of deal. I will fast forward through me marking out the frets and see you again when it's all over. And it is at this point that I realize that I could have made things a lot easier for myself. The problem here is doing it like this is just completely fine if the fretboard was this size, because I just realized that of course the fretboard is going to be a lot thinner or a lot less wide on one end than it is on the next. That means that the straight line that was here isn't the same line as it would be if they were closer together. So what I'm going to do is just to make sure that I get my frets absolutely right. I will, after I've marked out the 26-inch scale length, I'm going to mark out the size of my fretboard and where it goes, because then I'll be able to figure out where these points that I've marked out land on the fretboard. Because if I start drawing the lines now, they're not going to hit the right marks, and therefore they're going to cause me a lot of issues. later on because the scale length isn't where it should be. Damn, I hadn't thought of that before. Well, I'll just continue. Alright, now. As I've marked out both sides now, but to make sure that everything goes in the right place, I need to mark out my fretboard and where that is going to land before moving onwards and possibly making a mistake of any sorts. So, first things first, mark out the end of the fretboard, so this is the nut line. Due to the fading light, I need to bring in some extra help so I can see what I'm doing. Now I have the end of my fretboard and I have my center line. I know this end is going to be 43 mil, or it's going to have a 43 mil nut. So, easily enough, divide 43 by 2, which gives me 21 and a half, which is right there. Meaning that that's the base side, 40, 1, 2, 3, and that's the treble side. Cool. Now, where are my last few frets? Which would be right there and right there. So I know at this point my fretboard is about 56. So once again, 56 divided by 2 is right there. So now I have the size of my fretboard. Join those two lines. And here. There we are. That is the size of my fretboard. Now I know where everything is placed, and it is time for me to mark out the correct placements of the frets. In order to do that, you would usually use a protractor. I do not possess one, so I shall do it manually. Or, well, I should do it the good old-fashioned way. Once again, I'll fast forward so you don't need to watch this boring part, and I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so there was a moment there where there was just really bad lighting, so I couldn't see anything that I was doing. Anywho, I have now transferred the lines onto my fretboard lines. I realized that on video you're not going to see all that much of what I've drawn on here, but rest assured everything is there and it will make more sense soon enough. So, now, the very important part of connecting, the very important stage of connecting the 2 points between scale lengths. I'm going to start off with the edge that I can see the best. So, I've already marked my 24th fret. This will be, it will technically have 24 frets on the 26-inch scale and 22 frets on the 28th scale, just because of how I'm angling it. More about that later. Now, to make sure that I connect the right lines here. So I'm not connecting the ones that I have drawn on the edges. of the fingerboard, or of the fretboard blank, I'm joining the two lines that are on the fretboard line, so where my edge of the fretboard will be eventually. So that is here and here. Great. And then just repeat the process. I am doing it all the way through because that will help me when I'm actually marking it out with a scalpel and then eventually cutting. I know where both of the end points will be. Now, had I just joined the lines that are on the edge of the fretboards, I would have been about a mil off, and that is huge considering the fact that I'm doing these to the point of a mil. Being 1 mil off is fairly significant, so that would not have been good, nor would it have been correct. So this way I'm ensuring that I'm connecting the lines properly. I can't stress enough how a good light source is absolutely critical. As I approach the 12th fret, these positions are getting much more perpendicular to the fretboard, which, you know, is as it should be. There is this very slight slant on the 13th fret. 12th fret, completely straight. Now, moving on to the 11th, I should see a slant the other way, which I indeed do. There we are. So, started going like this, and now everything's starting to slant the other way, which is how it should be. Just changing camera angles ever so slightly because I realized I'm in front of the camera a lot of the time. You can't see what exactly I'm doing. A very good way to know if something, or with multiscale instruments, it's very easy to see if something's off. Because if the angle increases or decreases an amount that doesn't look right, or if there's some sort of mess up along the 12th fret, you'll notice it immediately. So the way that I can see it now in the light shining that way, seems that we have done a very good job. The lines look as they should, and we're almost done. Now that all of that is done, it's time to go back and basically redo that phase, but this time using a scalpel blade to score the fretboard. You will want to use as sharp a scalpel as you can get to ensure that your line goes where you indeed need it to go. Now, the way that I was taught how to do this, back when I did a bass guitar at Crimson Guitars, and I did the frets on that by hand, was do this basically 3 times. The first time you mark it out with a pencil, make sure everything is as it should be, which we did right now with this one. Then after that, score it with a scalpel blade, and then a third time score it with another blade that just opens the slot up a little bit, so it's easier to gain purchase with your saw. And I'm going to do that very same process here. I'm very glad that I realized that I needed to mark the size of my fretboard on this. Because man, if I had messed this up, I would have been pissed. Not to mention the customer would have been rather unhappy. That the frets were definitely not where they should be. Not a good thing. Kind of essential to do this part extremely precisely. Now what I'm doing here is, because my pencil is not as sharp as a scalpel blade, I am going in the middle, or I am scoring the fretboard in the middle of my pencil line. And when you're holding your ruler, be sure to have as many points of contact as possible. You do not want the ruler to slip halfway through a cut and then cut completely off, or in the worst case scenario, cut your finger. Oddly enough, rather hard to do commentary while doing this. Takes a good bit of concentration. I failed to mention that this is in fact my first multiscale instrument. So that's why there was a little bit of the confusion with the fretboard lines, as I mentioned earlier. Fortunately though, I got that solved right away. Right, now that's all done, I need to go get another knife to open those up with. Now, what I'm using for the last stage is this knife. Grandfather made this one. It's relatively sharp, but it's not the sharpest thing in the world. The only point for this is just to open up the slots that I've already cut so that the saw will fit in a little better. Because if I try and now cut along a scalpel line, the saw might jump out. So this is just, it's not exactly necessary, but this is more a sort of rather safe than sorry type thing. And I would rather be safe than sorry. Two passes is just enough to open up that slot a little bit more. And I'm using the edge of the ruler more as a fence than anything else at this point, leaning up against it. Leaning up against it just to make sure the cut goes where I want it to and stays in the scalpel line.
Now, with that done, we enter the final phase, which is of course cutting the fret saws with this lovely PAX fret saw. Now what I'm doing here is just taping up an edge so I know what depth to cut my fret slots. Now, fairly easy process. It's pretty much the exact same as if you were cutting normal frets or a normal scale length. Basically, the last two phases have been pretty much the same. The only way that this fretboard differed was the fact that you had to conjoin two lines instead of just going perpendicular to the fretboard and the center line. So, with that said, I am not going to make that first cut because I remembered. So, this is the 24th line, and 24, 23, 22. That is right here is where the bass side would end. Now the 24th fret, the fretboard doesn't end at the 24th fret. Of course, there is a little bit of overhang. So let's create that now, shall we? There we are. So there's the overhang. But now I want to go from said overhang to the aforementioned 22nd fret on the bass side. Like, damn it, like so. That will be how the end of the fretboard will align. So I start with getting 2 points of contact, and then slowly working to connect the two. While I'm doing this, I'm making sure that my saw is staying perfectly squared. This is made a lot easier due to the fact that this saw is built in this manner. Trying to do stuff like this on a Japanese saw would be complete hell because, well, they're sort of floppy. As good as the cut would be, not go where I would want it to. Now, fortunately, my pack saw is not as sharp as it used to be. It is actually very, very dull. So, this process will take a little bit of time. I think for tonight, I'm just going to cut off the excess pieces, then do the frets tomorrow. So, now as you can see, I have cut off the end of the fretboard. I realized that the camera ran out of juice at some point, so you missed that part. And my GoPro is about to do the very same right now. Well, that was fun while it lasted. Anywho, on with it. Basically all I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut off the other end
and then it's just a matter of slotting or cutting the fret slots. This doesn't differ in any way than cutting up a normal fretboard. It was basically only the marking out that was quite different to a normal fretboard. The only thing here is, like I did with cutting off the end here, is start as you would normally by making point of contact on both edges and then slowly working to join the two. That way you ensure that you're going along the line. If you start going straight for it, you might slip and deviate just a little bit. Not enough for you to notice by eye, but enough for it to make a difference to where the slot is. Especially on multiscale, I don't want to risk doing that. So I'm going to do it the safe way, where I start off on both ends, just join the two then. That way I know that I'll be going along that line. So yeah, with that all said, I'm probably going to speed this up, and I'll see you once I've done all the frets. Alright, now for this part, I am reapplying the masking tape that I took off previously. Now this is just to make sure that I cut my fret slots at the right depth. And I realize I put this on the wrong side because I'll be looking at it on this side, now won't I? So this ensures that I cut the slots at the same depth. Now, I'm not cutting these slots too deep at this point. I mean, I could, but I'm probably more than likely going to go back and cut them a little deeper once it's actually attached to the neck and radius and so on and so forth. But we'll see. Okay, seeing as my camera is sort of running out of battery, I'm gonna stop filming this for the time being, and I'll just get back to you once I've cut the entire board. Honestly, you've already seen the basics of it. It's just taken me forever because my saw is unbelievably dull. Well, not unbelievably dull, but it is not as sharp as it used to be. I do need to sharpen it. So, up until then, I have to make do, and it will take a while. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to cutting up a Wenge fretboard that I have lined up next. So, yeah, wish me luck on that. Good news is, I sharpened up my saw, so now it actually cuts somewhat. Well, yeah, now it cuts, as previously it really didn't. So, everything's going a lot quicker. One thing that you have to make sure that when you're doing this is that you have a very ergonomic working position, that your workbench or wherever you're sawing is at the appropriate height. For me, it really isn't. If I'm sitting down, I'm sitting way too low, and therefore it's not really working out. And with me standing, I'm having to hunch over, which is also not ideal. But you gotta work with what you got. That's the best thing I can come up with right now. also the fact that my workbench kind of moves. It does bend when I am pushing down on it, which is also not very nice. Hello. Hi. You try and do some work when there's a puppy. Do you need attention? Do you need attention, darling? Hi. Alright, so that is now a slotted multiscale fretboard. Like I said, basically the end phase of it is the exact same as any other fretboard you would have. So key points to keep in mind whenever doing this: start with your 12th fret, because more than likely that's always going to be a straight perpendicular line to your center line. Be sure to, if you're using a big fretboard blank, mark out your fretboard so that you have your nut width and your width at the bridge end marked out, because then you'll be able to mark out your fret positions much more easily. Ensuring that they're actually going to be the right scale lengths. And don't repeat the mistakes I made, but once again, this was my first multiscale fretboard that I've ever made. So with that in mind, I think it turned out good. I can't wait to put this on the guitar that I'm working on. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, push that like button. Be sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya, guys.